Welcome to Puck Talk CS. I'm here with my best pal, Steve Murno. We're ready to break down the New York Rangers Armchair GM for January. This is not to make a mockery of players' contracts, livelihoods. We're not here to make fun. We're not here to poke holes in sports and professional sports and the economics of it all. We're just here to talk about where we think some of the players are going for the New York Rangers and what we'd like to see. So, Steve-O, I'm ready to dive in, brother.
Let's do it. This will be a fun one. So let's talk some puck. Let's do it.
All right. First and foremost, Steve, we missed the boat on the letter. I think this episode is kind of microcosm or maybe a summary of our thoughts from the letter, and I think a little more specific as to now that we're over what the general statement was. I thought that the letter was just everything we already knew. It was kind of like a confirmation for the management group just to send that out. What were your initial thoughts? I mean, it seems like it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, first of all, it's such a puck talk thing for us to get on here on the show, and then literally right after we do one, they drop this letter. That is the most puck talk thing. It's been happening since 10 years ago. Whatever. If we would have recorded a little bit later, the letter would have came out the next week. That's how it would have worked. Yeah, my quick thoughts on it, or just big picture. Very interesting that they decided to drop it now. At all points in the season, it could have came last year, it could have came this year, could have came a little bit later on after the trade deadline. So I think management has reached a boiling point of where they felt like, you know what, we have to release this. And this is rare. Like us as Ranger fans, we don't get stuff like this, or management actively speaking out and telling us the direction of the franchise. We don't really see that. I don't really count James Dolan's appearance on WFN as that.
You're right.
I don't really think I didn't get the sense he even knows what's going on. This is more of jury and everyone else surrounding him, leading the ship on this. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand. Key words, retool. Definitely. This seems to be more of a retool as we head into, playing GM right here. I don't get the sense this franchise is going to go through a rebuild. It just, for listeners out there, you got to sit there, and I said this on the last episode, you got to think, there's culture, there's systemic issues with this team that are just throwing their depth issues. I just don't see a retool solving some of these issues. The only way to fully resolve some of these issues is to just fully blow everything up and start from the ground up. And that doesn't seem like the franchise is going to go out that route. But also, it doesn't seem like the fan base wants that route either. Can we sit there and go through, a clean slate, another 3 to 4 years of just, getting, probably below average hockey until we rebuild? And, I don't think this fan base, we're kind of restless in a sense. I don't think we can go there and watch that.
It's New York.
It's New York, man. New York or nothing, baby. And that's kind of gonna, influence my perspective of some of the moves we're about to talk to. But that's all, I had to say on my end. Anything else to add on that note?
Yeah, I think that term like retool is subjective. Didn't they just retool? They traded Kako, Trouba, Kreider, reshaped the defense. They signed Borgen, Vakanainen, and Susi. And suddenly we're back in the position where they're using the term retool. I think it's subjective. I'm also curious. They said move players we know and love. We're going to start with that guy in a moment, but they have to be careful about the players they move out because you want to set yourself up in a position where at least they're able to compete at the NHL level. They have guys that are hungry at the NHL level, and they don't have that much coming in. Like the Washington Capitals, when they retooled, they had the Hershey Bears, multi-year AHL champions. And they had guys like Protus, McMichael, that won with the Hershey Bears, called up, and now they're playing with one of the best goal scorers of all time. They draft Ryan Leonard, who they hit on at number 9 overall in 2023. So I digress. We're going to be talking about this letter for a long time. This is going to be the first style episode that we do like this. And we're going to start with Panarin in a moment. But first and foremost, I just want to give everyone a glimpse of what we're going to be talking about. Shout out Puckpedia for having all this information available and organized for everyone to use. Free resource online. So there's a look at your defense, Steve. It's pretty obvious there's three guys that are pretty much locked up. I'm going to state this now too. I don't want to keep rambling on, my man, but number one, overall, I think that we have to talk about to start this conversation is the Rangers management talk to leadership, and Adam Fox, Vlad Gavrikov want to stay. Okay. Igor Shesterkin has stated that he wants to stay. Now let's go to the forward group. This is where there's going to be a lot more, I think, a lot more change. We're going to get there too, but Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad stated he wanted to stay. Artemi Panarin was notified that they will be moving on from him. That was kind of a heartbreaker to a lot of fans because of what he's given New York. JT Miller stated he wanted to stay. Alexi Lafreniere has no trade protection. Vincent Trocheck might be the number one trade piece. Will Cooley just re-signed. And really the rest of the players outside of those young prospects are on the block, and I don't even know what you could get for them. Steve, are you ready to jump into Artemi Panarin?
Let's do it. Let's jump in.
Let's go for it. All right, Artemi Panarin, Steve. He's still producing at over a point per game, 11.625 AAV. He is a UFA this summer. He's 34 years old. Now, to paint the picture, Frank Cervalli reported that Artemi Panarin's probably looking for term. He's not looking to go to one destination for a playoff run and then go to another destination. He's looking to go somewhere that he can play the rest of his career. If he cares about the rest of his career, he's going to choose wisely, and he's going to have to work with the Rangers on this, and vice versa. The Rangers showed all of their cards by stating that everyone's available, doors are open. So with that said, Steve-O, Artemi Panarin, I want all your thoughts on maybe where you think he'll land or what you think the Rangers will do with him.
Yeah, well, I'll give two answers here. For listeners that are listening to us here at Puck Talks, yes, you know where I stand. Unfortunately, I'm going to be on the losing end of it. I would re-sign Artemi Panarin. Again, I think key words here that have been given out by management is retool. And I think Artemi Panarin is definitely a solution moving forward. He's nowhere near a problem on this team. I mean, you look at his offensive numbers. He's just such a central piece to this offense. I mean, you take him out of this team, I mean, you are not going to be watching good hockey. And quite frankly, I don't know how you stay competitive, because a lot of these games in the season, you and I watched a game where he wasn't in that game, and I think we got lucky. We won that game against the St. Louis Blues, but it is bad hockey when Panarin is not on the ice. So where I stand. I would re-sign him. I wouldn't want to give him a long-term contract. I think 3 to 4 years is ideal. Again, not what he's looking for. But if there was a way to work it out, man, I would have loved him. But he's going to get traded, and I think if Drury knows that a contract's not going to be worked out, I think you have to trade him. You have to trade him, and you have to get something valuable in return. So he's definitely probably, I think he beats out Vincent Trocheck as the most valuable asset in what you could get in return. I don't think Trocheck's that far off from behind, but Panarin, you got to trade him. As a New York Rangers fan, you got to go for the best. You got to go for the best offer and what brings you the most capital in return. But I don't want to see him trade to anybody in the Metro. I don't think he would go to anybody in the Metro. So what do you got?
All right, here's my thoughts. One, he's the 2-3 guy on a cup team. Like, we know that the biggest knock on Artemi Panarin is he's not that guy. His career as a New York Ranger has been amazing. One of the best free agent signings in the team's history, one of the best forwards in the team's history in terms of production. When it came to the team's 2 playoff runs, 22-24, when the ice got thick, when it got thick out there against Florida and Tampa, he struggled. And I think that's going to, 1, dictate some of the price. 2 teams, that's all you need to drive his value up. I think you try and get it done as soon as possible. That's task number 1 for this organization, is what to do with Artemi Panarin. All you need is 2 teams, and now you can play with each side. Well, this team's offering this. Well, as the management group, we're getting this offer. We can drive the price over here. Teams I think that he'd be interested in, or would obviously have interest in him. Minnesota Wild, it appears they're gunning for it. The San Jose Sharks have come up by multiple reports as a destination that maybe he sees. If I want to contract to 40 years old, I'll play with these younger guys on the come up. Um, and I think the Washington Capitals have been a sneaky choice for guys like Jeff Marek, a top reporter, and Emily Kaplan also mentioned that last week. So for me, it's going to be interesting because no matter what you get back, you're probably not going to be. It's never going to match what Artemi Panarin is meant to the franchise, but you're going to have to try and drive that price. You showed your hand as the management, so other teams are going to try and take advantage of that. But if you have 5 teams in on Artemi Panarin, boy, you can really kind of grab the wheel a little bit. So, like you said, from the perspective as reporting on him, fortunately, I was able to form a little bit of a good rapport with Panarin, and it is a shame to see him go, especially for what he's meant to the organization. All right, ready to move to Troche?
Let's do it. You start us
All
off.
right, so we're going with the obvious guys now, but I'm going to tell you, Steve, I left some bombs in there, a few surprises for us. So, first of all, let's talk about this 5-6-3. Any team in the NHL wants a third line center on a cup contender that does everything he does. Great leader, still can play top 6, power play, and there are no centers available. Probably the next best center available is Braden Shen. I'm going to take Vincent Trocheck over him every day.
Yeah, the thing to highlight is you mentioned 3C. I think he could step up and give you, easily in a first or second line, very easily with Trocheck. I think you got to listen to offers for him. You got to listen to offers. If one comes in and it's too good to pass up on, then you gotta trade him. A team that I think that could be a really top candidate. I think you mentioned them for Panarin. I think they'd be more interested in Vincent Trocheck. The Minnesota Wild, they're obviously one of the best teams in the league, and they showed a real desire to go out there and win a Stanley Cup over the next few years following the Hughes deal. And I think for as good as they are, I still think they have a lot of question marks down the middle. And I think Trocheck would be such a big acquisition for them. They've had a lot of injuries recently, especially when it comes to center. We know that the Wild GM loves Trocheck's game, given that he has taken him for Team USA. So I think Trocheck would be a great fit for the Wild. It's a question of what are the Wild willing to give up, and is that an offer that we can't refuse on? So I think if the deal's right, make the move. I think that letter signals the direction that they want to go into. If me personally, I would lean towards keeping Trocheck, but it's more of like it's like 55-45%. You got to see what you're going to get in there. It also depends, what a team would be willing to do in terms financially. I'm assuming that there would have to be some salary retention on our part, so we'd have to see how that's going to work. We might have to get creative with the roster, but I think you got to shop Trocheck.
No, it's Steve-O, actually, that's a good point you bring up. I actually don't know how much the Rangers would have to retain on Trocheck. If they retain on Panarin, 50% drives him down to 5.8. Teams will be they'll be lining up at the doors like that SpongeBob meme when everyone's lined up for the Krabby Patties. Yeah. I think Trocheck, this is the move. If you're really interested in a young center, trade. I would like to see a guy like Urov. He's played top 6 minutes. He's put up 19 points in 45 games. He was Minnesota's 24th overall pick in 2022. This team desperately needs centers. I think if you're going to trade a veteran center to a team that needs centers, try and get one of their younger centers because they got to restock the pipeline, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, next guy up, Steve. Oh, sorry.
Quick thought to finish it off. If it is the Wild, though, the one thing that I do want to highlight is that the Wild only have one pick in the first 2 rounds in like the next 2 or 3 drafts, so they don't have a lot of pick capital. Mentioned solid farm system, so that might be something we lean into, but we'll see what happens. But main message, you gotta take offers on Trocheck for sure.
Yeah, Yurov, they have Strommel, who's picked in 2023. He's another prospect they'd have interest in. And again, like we'll see if Billy G, if he's really pushing for a cup, those those picks become expendable. We saw what Vegas just did with Rasmus Anderson. Vegas has kept one first round pick in their entire history that they drafted. So um obviously not a team that's in the conversation. Well, I guess they're always in the conversation. Lafreniere's up next, baby. Um, Steve, you mentioned it last ep. Yeah, I feel like we beat the dead horse on Loff like to death. Um, but I flip flop. Like he's got no trade protection, but wouldn't you want to try and solve this problem or give him some runway and really just say if he's gonna tank, if he's really gonna tank his career, then like I don't know. Yeah, I feel like you're better off giving him some run and giving him the chance if there's gonna be guys clearing out and we're clearing house here.
I 100% agree with you. And I know last episode or 2 episodes ago, I was like, I'm taking cents on the dollar. That's how bad he was. I'm flip flopping too, bro. I'm gonna say keep on this one. I think with Loft, we know it's the same story. When he gets hot, but he never gets hot. And sadly, the reality is he's always cold. He's always ice cold. And after all that, what are we 40, 41 games in the season? He already has 2 scoreless droughts of 10 games or more. And it's just not gonna pan out. And I sit here and it's sad. Watching all the other first picks shine every single night, whether it's Bedard, Celebrini, Schaefer now, it stinks, and he what is his -7 or -8? I mean, it's like top 1 or 2 worst overall on the team, but the value is just so low for him right now. You're not going to get anything. It's probably best to keep him right now because what you're getting is nothing greater than what he could potentially be, 1 or 2 years if he snaps back into the same season he was a year or 2 ago, So I know I said I wanted him traded. I wanted him gone. He's very hard to watch. He's very frustrating. He's not been good, but just you're not getting anything for him right now. And I think both of us have noticed that, and I think I agree with you. Give him that runway, keep him. There's just no need. I mean, that would just be so laughable if we traded him for a bag of potato chips, which is what you're going to get at this point. So keep him. Why not?
Well, one thing to add, Peter Bow reported yesterday or 2 days ago that Rangers management talked to the leadership, and that also included some core players. And Lafreniere has not spoken to Chris Drury yet. So we're going to keep note of that and keep tracking that situation as it develops. I think if you want Lafreniere as part of your future plans or you really want to elevate him, it could be again, we all know our viral video a month ago was ranting about Lafreniere, so everyone knows where we stand. But I do think that maybe Lafreniere needs to be thrust into driving the boat. Like maybe that's just the position he needs to be in now. Has he shown that at all? No, but maybe it lights a fire under him. Maybe he sees it as an opportunity. I can become the guy here. There was always players ahead of him in the lineup. So no trade protection though. Hasn't spoken to Chris Drury yet. So we're gonna leave it at that. And he's obviously gonna be one of our top storylines to continue watching. Steve, all right to move on, or you got any final thoughts?
Kick it. Let's go.
All right. This one's an easy one. Carson Soucy.
This is the easiest one on the list, dude. I mean, he's got to be the first piece out the door. I mean, there is no reason to retain him. There's just no reason to retain him. So you got to look at where there's a need out there, and I think there isn't one glamoring team that could sit here and say every team needs help on the back end on the defensive side. If you want to sit here and say, is there one team that needs it more than the other? Maybe the Detroit Red Wings. Maybe they're trending towards their first playoff appearance. So they could use help around their roster. What was it, last year or 2 years ago? Yzerman got slandered for not getting help on the defensive side of things. So maybe given their place in the standings and where they sit, in terms of salary cap space, he could go there. Other than that, there really isn't, a team I would say, you got to ship him to. You just got to ship him. If he is a player that is on this team, uh, um, the first day after the trade deadline, Jury needs to be escorted out in cuffs, and he's not going to be because he's not going to be on the team. So I'm not worried about that. So you got to ship him. And I know you're going to agree with me. So lay it out.
Yeah, I think the challenge is, the only thing that stands out is that 12 team no trade list. I will state, I've actually been really pleased with Carson Soucy's play this year. I think last year he came in, I was someone that was on the boat of what the package they brought in was for a player like Soucy. Um, it didn't show at the end of last year. And I think what I've enjoyed is seeing his turnaround. He's one of the few pluses on the roster. He's added a few goals. Like, he's not a guy you count on for point scoring. He's got 8. So I think any team that's contending for a Stanley Cup that needs a player that's 6'4", 6'5", plays a physical brand, he's clearly a plus on the ice and is added to a team that has been really struggled all year. I want to give him a lot of credit for how he's turned things around, and I think he's actually boosted his value. So maybe he says, this is time. Let's go to a Stanley Cup contender, Steve. You know what? The Red Wings were a great pick, Steve.
Yeah, and again, like I said, there are teams that are always desperate for depth defensemen at the deadline. Again, respectable player. I think you could get Jury could squeeze out a respectable return, when it comes to the Soucy. So I listen, he's I agree with you. He's played a little bit better, but again, there's just I don't think it's marginal enough to keep him, and there's just no benefit when he's a free agent when I don't
No,
see him being retained.
no.
So
Yeah,
beat the Bucks
I'd say
down.
that more just the line of like, I've enjoyed that watching him improve because I think he kind of became a punching bag at the end of last season. And it's always great to see a player kind of like turn that narrative around. All right. So we're hoping he goes or ends up on a Stanley Cup contender. I like to see him on a Stanley Cup contender. Teams like Vegas, they love trees. They don't want bushes in the playoffs. They want trees. They want the big guys. He's long, he's big, he's physical. All right. Braden Schneider, this is a big one. Boom. And this was 2 things that shocked me. 1, 2.2. Wow. I don't know how this hasn't been talked about at all year. This is one has split the fan base online though. So Steve, what are your thoughts on Schneid's?
Yeah, this has. I've seen some interesting chatter out there. It's kind of surprised me out of all the other players that we have in Panarin and Trocheck and fan favorites. Shiny's kind of the one that has kind of divided the fan base. And you listen, he's a solid player with us. But again, his offensive production, and overall game has really not developed as much as I have wanted to. I remember, what was that, 2 seasons ago? Right after Gustafsson left, a year ago, both you and I sat here and we highlighted Schneider as a player that really could step up. And we talked about him once Adam Fox went down this season, and it just we haven't seen that spark that we wish we would have had at the time we recorded that. And I think at this point, you're obviously not going to see that. Restricted free agent, due for a new contract. The main question is, do we value him enough to sign him to a new deal? And I really don't think, I really don't know if we do, So I would say, he's a solid piece. You know what you're getting, but I think you got to shop offers on him too. I would lean shop trade offers / trade. If an offer is too good to turn up, I have no problem, giving Braden Schneider up. I really don't, as in terms of where, I think the San Jose Sharks are a sneaky team that could step up, and I think they would be very interested in him. I think he would be a nice piece for them. How about the Toronto Maple Leafs? I think they would be an intriguing option as well. I think they need a right shot defenseman. He would be young enough to be a contributor in the future, and probably would not cost Toronto a lot of assets in return. So those are 2 potential suitors. But I would definitely lean more towards on the trade side here. I would love to see if you agree or disagree with me on this.
100% because he's an RFA. So, like, if you don't move him before the deadline, well, then you can make a decision. You could still move him in the summer. I would say the the highest value right now is Vincent Trocheck and Braden Schneider because what Schneider can do is kind of like what Keandre Miller did. He signed with the Rangers and they traded him. It was a sign and trade that gave him the 8th year on his contract. And he had a little bit of leverage there to get that 8th year because the Rangers were like, well, we're going to move you anyway. Braden Schneider, you want to move him at 2.2 because it doesn't alleviate cap right now. It will be less of a handful if you have to sign him this summer or if you're forced into a situation where you have really no other option. I don't necessarily see that happening either, but Vincent Trocheck's value is at the highest right now. This team's only going to get worse. Braden Schneider's value to me is the highest right now. Teams need defensemen. They need right shot defensemen. Not a lot of those going around. They need centers. Not a lot of those going around. So I'm all for it. If I'm choosing a 1 and 2, it's Trocheck, Schneider, and obviously Panarin's a super obvious one. And but that's almost unfortunate, it seems. Like, it's funny how the different storylines are for each guy. So for Schneider, I'm going to say trade, and I like that San Jose pick. Toronto, I'm curious about because if they decide to rebuild too, not sure where they'll stand. Any last thoughts?
No, I'm glad we agree.
Eric, baby, he's up next. Our guy.
Our guy, little internally torn about this one. Obviously you look there and you look at the numbers and you say, wow, that is such a team friendly contract. And you look at what the value that he brings to this team. I mean, outside of Rempe, Carrick is kind of, that physical piece, someone that could drop the mitts at any point, on any occasion, and has won a few of them too. But I think this is definitely another piece that I think you have to look at his value and cash in and look at the direction of this team. And I'm not sure that, Carrick is a staple winning piece to this team right now, because I don't think we'll be in that position. So I think you definitely have to trade him and listen to offers on him. I think he's going to bluster any, current playoff bound team today, just like he did when he traveled from Anaheim to Edmonton. What was that, in 24 deadline? I think you got to take offers on him. I think he is another really valuable piece that gets really undervalued here. Obviously you hear the talk about Panarin and Trocheck, but in the same boat as Schneider, I think somebody that I think you gotta shop. You agree?
Yeah, everybody's name is going to be shopped. Or they're listening to offers on everyone. But you know what I like about Carrick's game? I put the face-off win percentage in there because when it comes to push and shove in the postseason, he's physical, wins face-offs. He could play a few minutes a night, and it's at $1 million. Like, most teams have $1 million to spend. So we'll see. And listen, I think we're not talking a return that's gonna blow your socks off, not near it, but you get a draft pick for him, fine. Unfortunately, it was serviceable. That's what you can turn that into. And I got a heavy hit next, Steve-O. This one's, yeah, I'm just going to pull it up. Mika Zibanejad. He's got the no move, 8.5 by 4 remaining. He's 32. He's a center. He played right wing when he was struggling at center. He's got 48 points in 52 games. So the reason I wanted to add him was because his value hasn't been higher in 3 years. And he already stated he wants to stay in New York. So is this a move that you see Chris Drury forcing out like Trouba and Kreider? Or do you think Drury might honor that Zibanejad wants to stay because the team just has no centers and you're probably trading Trocheck and Carrick?
Yeah. I think what's going to happen, what I would do are two separate things. I think Drury keep him. I think Mika's going to stay. You got to give him credit. You mentioned this. He's been consistent. You know, you got to give him that credit. He's been consistent this year, much better. You know, but with that said, you know, I think, you know me, I think I would lean towards trading him. You know, I think he's been a big issue, and I just don't know if he's going to get better. We've seen him get better, but again, you see this in sports all the time. I think you trade high when the value's high, especially in a situation like this. But you know, for Mika, I'm going to say keep because I don't see that happening. You know, just it's a shame we don't see that power play one timer as much as we used to. You know, and I think it kind of feels like, you know, he's got a 1% success rate, you know, and I think that kind of feel like that's why, you know, we've struggled and we've lost to the identity of this team. But you look at it and you say, you know, at least he's effective on the penalty kill, you know, unlike half the other team. You know, he's been much better with turning the puck over. I think the last 2 seasons he's done a whole lot of that. I think he's been a little bit more stable this year. But I would say jury's going to keep. I would take offers on him, but I think Meek is probably the hardest player on this team to trade. You know, and you know, a lot of teams again would be a little weary about him. So I say that he's gonna stay. Do you
Yeah,
really
I
think?
think I think the no move is the thing that like you force Goodrow, you cut Goodrow from the team. You force Truba out, you force Kreider out. Kako was upset, so you moved him. Hedel was injury prone, so you moved him. Chris Kreider you forced out. So are you gonna force a fourth guy out of New York? Um, what's it's funny, I think the conversations around the NHL media right now is what's the limit here? What's the limit where it is too far or you're really knocking at the culture that's already kind of shifted here in New York or the way you do business or conduct business. I think what Zibanejad can be beneficial for the team is that he's a 1C. If he wants to stay in New York, I actually see that. I try and see the positives there because his role on the when he was brought in, 24 years old, was he was 2C behind Stepan. He becomes the 1C, a scoring center. Then he hits that 41 goal season. That was a tick up. And now he becomes a leader in scoring for a team that's contending. In 24, it was a disappointing playoff. He fell off last year in a year the team needed him to step up. And I think now what he could be is a player that helps guide prospects into transitioning into the NHL. He has a calm demeanor about him. And I think that could bode well for a club that's looking to reset here. So I actually see the benefits. And of course, he still owned the Flyers last Saturday. He's still scoring. He's still contributing and he's producing right now. He's turned that around this year. So I I actually think his role shift here could be a good veteran presence to have on a team that is changing direction.
I agree. I agree 100%. I'm curious to see, you know, if to those of you listening, agree, disagree, and even for any of these, not just Mika, let us know in the comments. Sound off.
Last one, Steve-O, because there's one more guy I want to touch on, but this is the big one. Adam Fox.
Oh,
Adam Fox, it feels like there's been some discourse about the Olympic snub. He's injured right now. He's got 4 more years left. He's really in his prime right now. Does he want to win a Stanley Cup elsewhere, or does he want to remain with the Rangers for the rest of his contract? I think this is actually going to depend on what the offers are for him as an asset. Steve-O, what are your thoughts?
Adam Fox is for me is a huge untouchable. You know, I think there's no doubt when he's healthy. You know, he hasn't missed a beat this year. I mean, he looks great playing with his new partner. I love it. I think it's great. You know where I stand on that, and just the value that he brings to this team. I mean, he's kind of like Panarin in a sense, where you know when he was out and then when he came back in, I mean, we look like a completely different team. Especially, we all know he's QB1 on that power play. I'm keeping him, but I do want to bring it up. We haven't, well, you know, I feel like a lot of people don't talk about it. he's just injury prone, and for me, that's a big problem. This is the third consecutive year where he's going to be missing extended time with injuries. And we're definitely not going to be making the playoffs this year. But I think in the future, there's something to think about. I think 100%. I don't think we will make it as far as we want to if Fox gets injured like this again, and it's becoming a big problem and a pattern. Again, when he's healthy, I love him. I want him on this team. I think he will still be in his prime the next time that we are good or at least competitive again. But again, the issue is injuries. This is something not to roll over on, because I remember, wow, it's getting old. 2 years ago, like, this was something that we were like, this could be a problem. And the next 2 years came, and he was still injured for good portions of the season. So this is especially, and knee is not something to play around with. This is something to definitely monitor moving forward. I'm saying keep on this. I don't see him being moved, and I wouldn't move him.
All right, injuries, but keep. I'm
Yeah.
going a different route. The no move clause ends at the summer of 2027. So next season, that summer, I believe. Actually, let's pull that up quick before I make this point. There it is.
Sure.
The no move clause ends next season. Okay. So with that stated, I think if you're Adam Fox, you gauge this season upcoming. You play. I'm staying with the Rangers because I don't think Adam Fox's play is going to fall off so drastically next year that his value drives down. He's still among, like we say, top 3 at his best, top 20 at his worst. And any team is going to want that. If you're Adam Fox, I think you hold some power in this conversation. Well, one, because of who we're talking about, the player we're talking about, but two, the no move clause ends next summer. If he plays next year and says, I don't see what we're going for here, he can go to management and request a trade. And guess what? The no move is gone. He has the ability to do that. So I think Adam Fox is a New York Ranger for now. And I actually would like to continue talking about this the rest of the year, because I feel like no one's really talked about the fact that this no move clause ends next summer. I feel like that is almost poor timing for the Rangers management, because we saw how the bridge deals for almost like bridge deals, like with Keandre Miller, with Kevin Hayes, they almost didn't time out well. The Capo Caco bridge, like all those things just didn't seem to time out well for the Rangers. And it feels like this actually doesn't time out very well for them either, because if by game 50 next season, they're like sorely not convincing enough to be stating that they're in the right direction, Adam Fox can turn around and say, you know what? I'm going on 28 years old. I'm probably looking towards my last NHL long-term contract soon. I can't believe we're saying it at this point, but I think maybe he looks to move in before summer 27. But for now, he's a New York Ranger in my book.
I agree with you 100%. Funny you mentioned poor timing on our end. It seems to be like that's always the case. Never anything good with us.
Steve, I will say this. This is definitely something we want to continue to do. Probably monitor and throw one of these in every now and then just to talk about updates about specific players and everything. But wrapping just some thoughts from the initial letter, from these conversations about players and where they're at, who's going to be moved. A thought that came to my mind this morning was like something that they have to find a balance with is ensuring you have NHL players that can give you NHL minutes, and ensuring that you're also freeing up enough roster space to give young guys a chance. Because I'd also be disappointed if they send out this letter and then they only move Trocheck and Schneider. Then it's like, well, is this a retool? Is this like what's going on? That's what every team does if they're losing at the end of the year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I can. That's a good sentiment here to end on. I I agree with you, and I really can't get the read of this team, man. I really cannot. I don't know the direction, and I've said this before. You know, I don't want to be right, but that's just the way I read it. And if anyone listening to this agrees or disagrees, let us know. Let us know how you feel. But I just don't get the sense that we know the direction we want to go in. At least you look at the course of last year and you look at the course of this year. It just looks like we're making moves. It's like, all right, get rid of this piece, get rid of this piece, get rid of this piece. We could go up and down the list of how many players we got rid of. We've gotten rid of them, but you look at the return that we've gotten, and to me, it's just not a recipe for quality, to win anytime soon. And again, if we are going to go out and make these similar moves, and go out there and get rid of Trocheck and get rid of Schneider and get rid of Panarin, if it's anything like we've gotten in return, for the pieces that we dealt last year, I just don't know what the direction or what the goal is. It just feels like we're making moves and like we're winging it on the fly. Like that's the sense that I'm getting with. And again, if anyone disagrees, anyone agrees, let us know. But I want to point out that on the last episode, both you and I stated that we don't trust Drury with this. This is kind of uncharted waters. It's kind of a new wavelength of moves that he's gonna have to make. Yes, he's been great. He was great in 21 and 22, and bringing in pieces in 23 for a team that was ready to compete. He just, I don't know if I trust him with this. And I still stand by that. I question it. And I just don't know where we're gonna end up. The only thing I know for sure is that we're gonna be here breaking it down and giving our opinion on it, whatever it is. But I agree with you. I think that's a great point to bring up here at the end.
And a lot of the draft picks were Jeff Gorton's draft picks. A lot of them were bust. We also have to acknowledge that. I think there's some revisionist 2020 looking back on like Jeff Gorton's tenure in New York. But with that said, your top prospects, Dan Rosen wrote this in August. Perreault, he's getting more minutes now, right? He's playing with top players. He's getting adjusted. Sorry, I think my camera stopped for a second. He's getting adjusted to the NHL. Scott Morrow, he's playing more minutes in the NHL now. Brennan Hoffman just scored his first career goal. I think that's a guy that gets a new lease on life because of the situation. And then here's my concern. Malcolm Spence. He was a player that was first round caliber, dropped to the second round. He was one of those slide candidates, just like Gabe Perreault. So is he ready for the NHL next year? Probably not. I'd say 27, 28, he's up. EJ Emery, the same thing. So two of your most recent top picks probably won't be coming up anytime soon. So like, who's coming in? Are you drafting a player that's coming into the NHL? They don't have a good track record of development. They don't have a good track record of drafting players. So that's also my concern. And maybe that's down the line. But it is officially the time where we're going to just be reading and reacting to reports and reacting to moves. And we're almost all too familiar with this. I feel like I know the playbook from 2018, right, Steve? Like, that was such a new experience. It was like, trading for first round picks. And now it's like, you see everything happening. It's like, oh, all right, I know what this is looking like.
Yeah. Well, if there's any hope for the future, you look at 2018, say, not even less than 3 years later, I mean, you were competitive again. You can't really count COVID. That was such a one-off, like just rarity of a situation. So you could even say, in 2 years, you were competitive again. So I do think we get there again. But this year and the moves that we make are definitely going to be sentimental to the direction of where this franchise is going to go. And I'm excited to see, but at the same time, I don't have any like hopes or expectations for anything. That I think there's going to be a lot of disappointment on the side of us come these moves. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Steve, honestly, to wrap, I mean, like we said, trade deadline, Olympics February 6th, we'll be covering that. Trade deadline March 6th. So, geez, that's a week or two away for the Olympics. And Now just a little bit over a month for the trade deadline, so we're going to be wired in for this. And yeah, it's unfortunate we've gotten to this point.
Yeah, and for all Ranger fans listening, everyone could agree with that. There's nobody that sits here and watches, and I think we've gotten to the point in the season where a lot of Ranger fans have stopped watching. So with that being said, I think that'll wrap us up here at Puck Talk CS. As always, we will be here recapping everything that goes down. We also want you to step in the role of GM Armchair and let us know. Comment down below. You can DM us on Instagram. Let us know you agree, disagree with us. We love interacting with everyone, so let us know. And always remember, it's just the luck of the puck.